Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. My name is Stephanie Churchman and I'm the Communications Manager here at Blackmores. In today's episode, we're continuing with our Meet the Consultant series where we introduce you to our team of isologists. You have already heard from many of them on previous episodes, as they often come on to talk about their standard specialties. But in this series, we're taking a bit of a step back from the technical world of ISO to learn more about the people who help demystify ISO implementation for our clients. Our team of isologists come from a wide range of backgrounds, with a collective skill set to implement over 20 ISO standards, and together they've helped Blackmores support over 600 companies to achieve various quality, environmental and risk-based standards. Today we're introducing one of our principal isologists, Steve Mason, who is our standards champion for many standards including ISO 27001 Information Security Management, ISO 27701 Privacy Management, ISO 27017 Cloud Services, ISO 27018 Personally Identifiable Information in Public Clouds, and ISO 20000-1 Service Management. Steve's been a member of our team for 10 years now, and as you may have gathered from his list of standard specialties, he is our resident information security guru. Steve's also had a hand in guiding many of our consultants over the years, giving them the confidence to deliver projects from start to finish, including how to ensure a smooth assessment support process for our clients. He's been instrumental in developing key toolkits that the whole team uses, and in general is a font of all knowledge, at least in our eyes. In addition to all the technical knowledge, Steve is also one of our mental health first aiders, working closely with Minu, who you may remember from a previous episode, to help support our team on a more personal level. I can certainly attest to the jovial positivity he brings to each in-person meeting we have, and our clients have nothing but praise for his approach to ISO implementation and support. So without further ado, welcome Steve.
Welcome. Thank you. Sorry, I shouldn't say welcome, should I? Yeah, thanks for asking me. And listening to that introduction, thinking, yeah, that's all there.
I think I covered everything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me today. And we're going to be going a bit more into your journey about how you fell into the world of ISO, as it's not really one that many seem to find themselves falling into. So starting with, I know I covered a bit of it in that intro, but in your own words, what is your role at Blackmores?
Well, she said, I'm a principal isologist, and I do cover all those standards. A couple of others that I do cover, such as 22301, which is the business continuity. I took on 41,000, which is facilities management. I took that on because it's very, very similar to 20,000. So it's the kind of baby brother of 20,000. So it's fairly easy to implement. And of course, I'm taking on that big standard, the brand new one, 42,001. Which is the AI standard, which everybody seems to be interested in. Funny enough, I was on Three Counties Radio this morning, picking up 42,001.
Oh, yeah.
They were talking about using AI on a regular basis. So I put forward some points about 42,000. You know, anybody in the Three Counties area, you'll hear me on the radio every now and again. I'm known as Steve in Stevenage. I wasn't named after the town, if that's of any help. But yeah, so that's my main role, is really to try and understand those standards. And I like to put standards into simple, everyday language. People try to turn standards into a kind of black art, as one person once put it to me, or a dark art that only the chosen few can ever decipher. But that's complete nonsense. And really, when you read a standard, certainly nowadays at standards, the language has got much better. Don't try and think, well, what are they really trying to get at? It's as simple as what you read on the paper. There isn't any mystery, but we'll come to that later, perhaps when we carry on with this interview. But my other role, obviously, is a mental health first aider. I've been doing that since 2019. Mel came to me one day and just said, I think you'd be right fit for a mental health first aider sort of thing. And I thought, okay. She said, yeah, because of your role outside of the office. Because outside the office, I'm a minister in the United Reformed Church. So she said, I think you've probably got the skills for listening to people and empathising with people. And lo and behold, I went on the course. It was run by St John's Ambulance, I believe, Mental Health England as well, together in conjunction. And it was a very, very good course. And it helped you get a better understanding of what mental health is. After all, we all have mental health just as we have physical health, and we have to look after that mental health. Sometimes just as we get physically sick, we can become mentally sick as well. And mentally sick doesn't mean that that you're mad or that you've got to be locked up in an asylum or anything like that. All these old cliches that you get from Victorian times. It simply means that you might be suffering from a bit of stress. And sometimes when you talk to other people about that, it might mean that we can help you through that stress, either by helping you to think about things in a different way, or even helping you to talk with your line manager to take some of the pressure off you as you go through difficult times. And those difficult times can be either things within work or outside of work. It doesn't have to be anything specific in that sense. So that's a bit of a potted history for mental health, if that helps.
I mean, it is such an important subject. I mean, so important, in fact, that they developed a whole standard specifically around that with ISO 45003.
Yes, they have. I have sort of dug into that standard. And there is another one, is it 29,000, which is about suicide prevention.
Yes, and we did an interview with one of the people that helped create that. I think he was actually the lead of the committee.
Yes.
So I'll link that for people to listen to, but it is a very needed standard, I think. I'm glad someone came forward to do something around that.
Yeah. And as somebody that's been driven down that route before because of bullying in the workplace, almost to the point where I think to myself, I've had enough. Yes, it is very much needed. And also people in workplaces, those in HR and even managers need to be much more aware of what their actions can do to their staff. And it wasn't a nice place to be. I sort of went a little bit, for want of a better word, doolally for a while, just because of the stress. It was 2.5 years of bullying.
Oh, that's awful.
Not many people put up with that. But I'm all right now because that was so good 30 years ago. So, but having been through that, and I think that was the reason why I like to do this, because I've been there, I've experienced it, I understand what people go through in the worst case scenario, and I could use that experience to help others and also stand up for people, defend them, and say, sorry, but you're not going to treat this person like that. Not that anything like that happens in Blackmores, because it doesn't. We've got a brilliant sort of working environment where we're like a family. Although we have our differences and perhaps might have the odd spat every now and again, it's always with the best interest, and there's never really what you might say a cross word or anything like that. So it's a good atmosphere. It's a positive one. Certainly not toxic.
Yeah, as I say, we work hard to foster that and making time for each other as well, trying to do more in-person meetings since obviously COVID, we went pretty much fully remote, although things are going back to sort of a 30-70 split between on-site, but we try and maintain that with the team as well.
Yeah,
important. And obviously yours and Minu's role is very important, as we highlighted on our last team day.
Yeah. I mean, I thank Minu really, because she's certainly a driving force. She's got the energy to do it. Being a lot younger than me, and so she does a lot of good work there. And I intend to act as a bit of a sounding board in that sense. But I'm glad what we found out in the last team meeting, that it was valued by so many people. And obviously there's some areas from that survey we did where we can improve on our mental health support. And that's what we're here for. Any good system is about continual improvement.
I say that's the foundation of ISO, and we seem to turn it into absolutely everything. It's not forced, we swear.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I guess moving on, I mean, positive topic still, but what about you as a person? What do you do in your free time? What hobbies do you have? And I know you're a very well-versed person, so I'm interested to hear the answer to this one.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, what free time? I mean, as I said earlier, I'm a minister in the United Reformed Church. United Reformed Church was formed back in about 1972 and is a mix of Presbyterian and Congregational churches coming together. And we have a close relationship with some Methodist churches as well. I'd originally started in the Church of England. I had always wanted to be, for many years, a priest, but the Church of England didn't seem to want to encourage that. So I got as far as being a lay minister in the Church of England, but then a few years ago I decided to change tack and join the United Reformed Church. So I mainly work out of the United Reformed Chapel in Walken. So if you know Walken High Street, there's a chapel right at the end of the High Street. It's about 213 years old, I think, the chapel, built in 1813. Apart from working there, I also lead worship at places like Ashwell, Baldock, Stevenage, and Nebworth. So it just depends what I've got on my rota. People phone me up and say, "Can you come and do a service?" And I'll say, "I've got a free Sunday there. Does that help?" And that's how I fit them in. So, and it's not too bad because I might do 2 services a day. And if I'm doing Baldock in the morning and walking in the afternoon, I can use exactly the same service. And that nobody's going to know. Although I'm quite honest and I do tell them. Yeah, so that's probably my ministerial role. I also write poetry. I got into writing poetry a while back now, and I've got about 190 poems that I've written. Some are very silly, some are sort of reflective. What I tend to do, I tend to sit down somewhere and take in surroundings and understand what's around me, and then just scribble a few words down. And then I might go away and try and polish that off into a poem later. Now, the reason I can do poetry now is because somebody once said to me, don't think about the rhyming in poetry, just think about a word painting. Paint the image you see in words. And that way it becomes a lot easier to actually write poems because you're not worried about, well, what word rhymes with this word and what rhymes with that word. You can just put down what your feelings are. Although I do come up with some very quick rhyming ones. I can remember one I wrote about my cat eating birds, I think it was called. I dream of eating all the birds. I hear they're rather yummy. I know I'll have to catch one first and then I'll fill my tummy. Um, so um, that's a sort of Spike Milligan inspired poem.
Yeah.
Because I used to read a lot of Spike Milligan poems when I was younger. So I could say I've honestly got some inspiration there. I might have a bit of inspiration from, some people pointed out, Keats and Wordsworth. I'm not as good as them by any means, but I tend to read a lot of John Betjeman. So you tend to get to understand how other poets work. And then you sort of build from there. But I have got my own style. Sometimes my poems are political. Sometimes they're just reflections on nature. Sometimes they're just purely daft, rather like that one I just recited.
I'd say if anyone follows us on LinkedIn, you may on occasion see a couple of Steve's poems. If we've ever posted poetry, it's usually come from Steve. I think I posted one that you did on, I think it was coffee on one. I think it was like an international coffee day.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Something to do with coffee shops.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a while back now, wasn't it? Yeah. I've done a few on coffee shops and drinking sort of artisan coffee and that sort of thing. And that's the sort of thing you can do. You can sort of sit there and you just let your mind run away with itself and pick up some words. I did write an ode to a pint of stout once. And that's because I was in Ireland. They poured this pint of stout, and I got back to my table, and I just watched it settle, and I just described what I was seeing, and what I was feeling, and so that became my ode to a pint of stout. So I did send it to Guinness because he did mention Guinness at the end of the thing, and they quite liked it, but they said it may not feature in their market. So I'm not that famous.
Oh, well, at least they know you're inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got lots of other interests. I mean, I'm not a sort of one-trick pony, as they say. I love my classical music. Beethoven, Mahler, and Shostakovich tend to be my composers. Beethoven mainly because he used to bend the rules and break the rules and stretch music to its limits as he knew it at the time. And I suppose Mahler and Shostakovich did the same in their time. And I think that sort of sums me up a little bit because I'm somebody, certainly when it comes down to standards, just trying to sort of stretch standards to their limits and make them more flexible and usable. So I think that music, I tend to get that out of the music I listen to. I also like music. One piece of music particularly is Stravinsky's Rite of Spring.
Mm.
Most people will hear that and think, awful. But once you get to know it, it's a brilliant piece of music and it's very primeval in its sounds and everything like that. And it can actually get right to the inner spirit of the person listening. So that's my classical music stuff. I love exploring the London Underground, not just riding up and down trains, but I go on what's known as hidden London tours. And this is where a guided tour will take you around all the corridors and things like that that have long since been defunct. So a few years ago, I went on one in Euston Station, and we went down a corridor that was last used in 1973. I recently went on one at Holborn Station. We found some platforms that were last used in the 1990s. I also did Aldwych, and we found a platform that was last used in 1915. So it's just wonderful stuff that's down there. And you get to do these tours by going onto the London Transport website and signing up to their Hidden London tours. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of fascinating stuff under our feet when we walk around London. And I just find these things fascinating, just going to different locations and see things. And a lot of them, in fact, the Holborn one, when we did that, we actually ended up on one of the platforms where they filmed things like Superman 4 and a few other films. So whenever you watch Superman 4, which was one of the worst Superman movies ever made, you'll see a bit where he's flying up and down the tunnel. Well, that was at Holborn Station, and the platform's still there, but it's not used by trains anymore. So you know me, I love buses and trains. I mean, people can't see this, but I've got a bus number just above my head.
Yep, yeah.
In the video.
I can attest to that.
That is RT4777. That is the only bus I've ever driven, and it was at Northwood Airdrome. So, and I've got a cabinet to the right of me here as I speak, a couple of cabinets, which are full of model buses. My oldest model bus goes back to 1954, and it's one of the first model buses that was issued by Matchbox in the early days. So I've got that. I often go out to sort of bus rallies whenever they're on, or bus riding days. So often where owners of old buses allow you to go riding on their buses around the streets. So I try and go on those. You know me in history. I love my history. Richard III, the War of the Roses, Anglo-Saxon period, anything like that. It's just I tend to lap it up. People know me. In fact, this is probably what I'm known for in Blackmores by a few people, is that if we walk down the streets in London, I'll suddenly stop and say, oh, by the way, did you know that so-and-so and so-and-so used to happen here?
Yeah, I referred to my intro as a fount of all knowledge, and it's not just in ISO standards, it really is in pretty much everything. It's sort of like a random fact generator for us whenever we're out and about.
Well, it might be the reason I actually appeared on The Chase back in 2017. Because I just tend to sort of soak up what most people might think are useless facts, but they're just here, and I just enjoy facts. I don't know why, but I was always like it at school. I was never the kid out on the playground playing football. I was always the kid in the library reading books. Not that I wasn't a SWAT by any means, because I find it very hard to SWAT, certainly for exams and things like that. I just enjoyed subjects, and I just wanted to read about them.
I can share the sentiment. I was a library monitor back in my school days, and I did much the same thing.
Excellent. They wouldn't allow me to be a library monitor. I don't know why, but probably were afraid I might have taken all the books, but that's another thing. I suppose a couple other things about me is that I've done my family tree. The furthest I've got back to is 1547. The weird thing about that is that actually it's a couple of people, George Dards, yeah, and I think it was Agnes Odell. They got married at St Nicholas Stevenage, this church, which I can actually see from my room here. Now, I don't come from Stevenage. I was born in Edmonton. And as far as I was concerned, most of my family lived Edmonton, Tottenham, Stoke Newington. It's only in recent times I've realised that there's this trail on my mum's side that comes up through Hertfordshire. And I follow that trail all the way back to 1547, back to Stevenage. So it's almost as if over those nearly 500 years, I've come back in a full circle. And it's rather interesting that St Nicholas Stevenage is where I first qualified as a lay minister in the Church of England. Some very strange things happening here, But the interesting thing about their wedding certificate or wedding record, when I finally found it on the internet, was it was all written in Latin. So I had to do a bit of translating on that one. So, and having done the family tree, of course, I've done my DNA, and that shows me that I'm very Central European, sort of German, Austrian, Czech, North Holland, little smattering of French in me. I think it's Norway, Iceland, and Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. So, but it's not until, funny enough, not until almost records began that I become English in that sense.
Mm.
You know, and the interesting about having that DNA, where the large percentage of me is German, I do love going to Germany on my holidays, Germany or Austria, and ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, Touristendeutsch, in fact. So where it's come from, I don't know. It's just a strange thing, but I just love the country, love the culture in Germany. But then, of course, as you know, I've got my cats.
Yes, yeah.
I've got 2 cats now, and I've had many cats over the years. So the funniest cat name I gave was Spartacus. I had a little tabby called Spartacus, and I wanted the vet to one day come out and say, "Spartacus, where's Spartacus?" And I just wanted everybody in the vet room to turn around and say, "I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus." But it never ever happened, sadly.
Sounds like a Monty Python skit.
It almost it's actually the final scene, or one of the final scenes from the film Spartacus. If you ever watched that,
Yeah.
so but that shows you my sense of humour. I suppose that's what I'm renowned for, is that I've got a strange sense of humour. So it goes down to cat names. But anyway, I think that sums me up. My free time, my hobbies. So with all those interests, you probably think, what free time does he have? So.
Well, I mean, I suppose it helps now that you've got quite an interesting kind of work schedule, haven't you? You're kind of doing the right way to winding down, aren't you? It's sort of like you have...
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm going to sell it as a Steve Mason method because everybody seems interested. It's the same as doing a 4-day week, but it's about saving up that Friday, that one day off, and having it all in one go. So you have 1 week off instead of 1 day a week off.
Mm.
And everybody I talked to about that said, "That's brilliant. It's a wonderful idea." So I'm planning on actually trademarking it and copywriting it and selling it.
Well, thank you for giving us that overview. As you can see, he's a very colourful personality with many, many facets. And I'm sure, again, you'll see some of his poetry appear on our LinkedIn, so you have to follow us to see some more of that. But I suppose, considering what you do in your free time, it's kind of... You wouldn't have thought any of that would link back to something as what people would see as dry and as studious as ISO standards. So what did you do before Blackmores? What was sort of your path towards becoming an ISO consultant?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I was once told in 1980 that there was no future in standards. Find another career, perhaps in sales and purchasing.
Harsh.
Yeah, mainly because I'd sort of started to use standards, and it just somebody said, don't bother with that, no future in that. Funny enough, I'm not a very good salesman. I did try to go for a sales job once and failed miserably in the interview. And purchasing has changed beyond all recognition now from what it used to be back in the 1980s.
Mm.
But the first day I walked into Rakel Gardel, I worked in Goods Inwards for a short period. And I had a standard put in my hand, which was BS 6005, which is the sampling standard. And the sampling standard, which tells you the amount of sample you need to take and how many defects you're allowed to have if you're inspecting something. So it's very much the old days of inspection. But before I sort of got further into standards, I was lucky enough to do an apprenticeship at Rakel, where I went around every single department in the company and spent about 3 months in each department learning how those departments worked. And that actually gave me a strange appreciation for business and how departments can interact, and also the importance of good communication between departments. Because unless you had good communication, then things fall apart. I did find after I did the apprenticeship, people were coming up to me and saying, "I've just been told this by purchasing. Is it true?" And I was able to turn around and say, "Yeah, actually, they're telling you the truth. They're not misleading you. That's exactly what's happening." Or they might turn around and say, "You know what happens in design and technology. Why are they telling me this?" And I was able to give them another point of view, sort of thing. So I acted as kind of, I don't know, a mediator.
Yeah.
Or a person that helped people to understand other people's way of working, just simply by doing that apprenticeship. And the weird thing was that I think that set me up for standards and going down that direction. It was in '83 that I finally had BS 5750 thrust in my hand. as I worked in quality, and they said, we need this. And I thought, what's this? And of course, I had to get to work on that. And in those days, standards were very much, let's write as many documents as we can, make it look as if we're doing something.
Yeah.
But we don't really have to do it, sort of thing. It was a bit of a joke, to be quite honest. And over my time, I have sort of been involved in many management systems, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think I do know what a good system should be. I certainly know what an ugly system is. An ugly system is one where you're spending more time keeping a system going than you are sort of benefiting from it being in place.
Yeah.
And that's definitely not a place to be. So all my life, 46 years, all my working life, it has been standards. And for some reason, I've just been steered in that direction. I've gone through lots of big companies, people like BOC Omeda, Tektronix. Who remembers Tektronix, the oscilloscopes? I've worked for TDK. I've also worked for British Standards for about 14 years. But it's always been around manufacturing, service, distribution, and always in the roles of either quality or customer service. So that's my strength. And I think that's what's shaped the standards that I do now, because that quality and customer service, also working in some of those technical organizations like TDK and Tektronix, has led me towards the information security side of things. But I think, truth be known, I've always been a closet consultant. Dare I say, even in my BSI days, you weren't allowed to be a consultant if you're an assessor.
Yeah.
But I was a closet consultant. But I always make it clear to my clients that don't ever come back to me and say, you told me to do it this way. And they appreciated it, because it wasn't a case of saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It was a case of just throwing a few ideas on the table and say, go away and think about it. So, I think it was Jitesh, who works at Exponentially. He was the one that referred to me as a closet consultant. So, yeah, so I think it's always been in there. And when Blackmores gave me that opportunity to come and join them 10 years ago, it was probably the fulfillment of my career in many respects. I'm not saying that because I'm here now in Blackmores, but simply that I do believe that our careers take us in a direction, and we finally get to a job where everything in the past suddenly makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, why was I doing all that? Why did I do that apprenticeship where I went around different departments? You know, here I am as a consultant now doing 9,000 and 20,000, where I'm talking to people in different departments. And it helps you to appreciate whether people are being a little bit blinkered in the way they look at things. And you're in a better position to offer up perhaps a bit more advice and ideas when it comes down to consultancy. But one thing Blackmores has done is helped me to develop the portfolio that I had, because when I was with BSI, you're only allowed a maximum of 3 standards at BSI. I had 9, 27, and 20. But coming into Blackmores, I've then added to that all those other standards we mentioned earlier, which would never have been possible elsewhere. You know, somebody once said to me, it's a bit like you leave the best till last sort of thing. And I think Blackmores, I recognise, is probably my last job, as I'm only a few years away from retirement now. And it truly is the best till last. So, and I mean that sincerely, not, and I'm not trying to do flattery or anything like that. You know?
I mean, yeah, that path, it's interesting. It kind of follows Ali's very similarly. She was in a similar position, sort of. I can't remember if it was apprentice, but it was very much the same thing. Kind of worked her way up to various quality roles, but it was always standards were always a part of that in some fashion that she had to interact with. Yeah. And from there, it just kind of, as you say, it snowballed, and it just kind of became the path that you're on. You're known as the person who deals with the standards, and then that's what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing with about being a consultant is that you're born to be a consultant. I don't think you can train people to be consultants necessarily. It's in you. It's in your DNA. It's in the way you work, sort of thing. And it's about being curious. It's about being supportive and helpful. And if necessary, taking the firm line if you have to, but also giving that gentle nudge in the right direction. And I think that all of us in Blackmores have got that in us, you know, got that ability, and have had the sort of consultancy DNA built in us, right, probably from an early age in that sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a specialist skill. Obviously, I'm more marketing here for Blackmores, and it's not a skill. I don't think I have that one. It's one I recognise in all you guys. It's similar kind of personalities, and as you say, very good listeners, and it's never about telling someone what to do. It's about taking a step back and offering other points of view, opinions for how things can work, but letting clients kind of, implement it in a way that best fits them.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And that's actually quite an important thing because if we think about our favourite aspects of being a consultant, I think mine is actually about talking to clients.
Yeah.
You probably can tell by now that I can chew the hind leg of a donkey. Get me on the subject and I'll just talk about it for hours. Anybody wants to come to any of my church services, don't worry, my sermons do not go on for hours. 12, 15 minutes at the most. So, but it's about working with clients to find the solution, as you say, offer up different ideas. I suppose my motto with all standards is about molding the standard to the organization and not the organization to the standard. What that simply means is look at what you have already got in place and then say, does this meet the requirements of the standard? If it does, leave it alone. Don't touch it. If it doesn't, then look at what the standard's asking you to do and then just tweak what you've already got. Anybody that builds a standard that fits uncomfortably with what they already do and doesn't really mold into the business has really got a bit of a bolt-on system, and nobody's going to own that system except the person who put it in place.
Yeah.
So that's why you should always build a management system that meets the requirements of the business, that is aligned with the company's own ethos and strategy. And that's so, so important. And I think that's, as a hopefully a consultant, I'm trying to do, trying to encourage people to do. So remember that one. Mold the standard to the organization, not the organization to the standard. Because if you think about it, the standard is not saying you shall have the same management system as the company down the road and the company down the road for that. The standard is saying you shall have a management system, but you tell us what that management system should look like, the shape. Because now you're allowed to explain the context. You're allowed to explain the scope of your organization. That's the opportunity to set the scene for your management system being put in place. But I do find every now and again assessors are a bit slow on the uptake here because they still go in. There's still some of them. There are some really good assessors out there, don't get me wrong, but there's still some of them go in with a fixed idea that a management system should look one way and one way only.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you're not going to last long in the assessment world if you go at it that way. And you're going to have a rough journey from consultants like us. If you go in with the attitude of, I'm here to learn how you put the management system in against the standard and be open with your questions, then you're going to get an easier time. I say that as a friend. Sorry.
No worries. You mentioned earlier there that one of your favourite aspects of being a consultant was just talking to the clients. Are there any other aspects around consultancy that you really enjoy? Obviously, this being sort of like your first foray into consultancy from your last role as an assessor.
I suppose it's not just talking to clients, it's being supportive of my colleagues. I do like supporting my colleagues. I know they come to me and ask me questions, and hopefully I have the right answers for them. Sometimes it's just a case of we chew over the cud together to find out what's needed. I'm not one of these people that holds information to myself. I don't see the value in that. Information is free and should be available to people, and especially when it comes to standards. So it's no good me having an idea and keeping it to myself. Let's share those ideas. Let's learn from each other, better practices and better ways of working, so we can really create better ways of implementing standards in different companies. So yeah, I do like, I think it's just that interaction with people. And it's very hard to sort of say exactly one definite thing that I find is my favourite. I think the whole thing together. I could tell you what I don't like. I really don't like auditing.
Kind of ironic, I guess, given your role.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I do audits and I will do audits. I've got no problem with that. But it's not my favourite bit of being a consultant, so...
I suppose it's kind of like taking a test, isn't it? The guided test. It's kind of like you've done the fun part and now you have to kind of evaluate it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And also you're constantly thinking, you're asking a question, you're getting the answer back and you're then thinking to yourself, is that answer adequate? Where's the evidence I need to find to prove that, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's just not my cup of tea. And probably because I've been auditing now since about 1986.
Probably gets a bit samey after that amount of time, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, different questions come out, but you're going through more or less the same sort of process.
Yeah.
In the early days, it was fine. It was exciting. And I think now it's lost that sort of appeal.
I think that's more than understandable.
But that doesn't mean just because I don't like auditing, it doesn't mean I give a lesser service, because I don't. It's about integrity. When you come to do anything, standards or auditing, you've got to maintain your own personal integrity. And that means also maintaining integrity of the standard. And I would always say this to everybody, that never see a non-conformity as a negative. Just a minor non-conformity is not a negative. Just appreciate it as a positive finding that, hey, this guy's done his job, or this young lass has done her job in doing the audit. They found the non-conformity. We can now put that right before the assessor gets in. The only time you should ever really sort of feel perhaps knocked a bit is if you get a major non-conformity, because that's implying that you've actually stopped trying. That's implying that you've not put the effort in, and you need to look seriously about your company, yourself, the way you do things, as to why you've got that major non-conformity. So, and they're not given away lightly by any means.
No.
All of us will try hard to see whether it's a minor non-conformity long before we ever think about a major non-conformity. So think on the positive side of findings, even for minor non-conformities.
Yeah, definitely good advice.
Yeah.
I imagine you probably come across, I'd say, minor and major non-conformities more than others because you deal with more technical standards.
Yes.
So kind of on a segue, I guess, to that is we've thrown out quite a lot of numbers for people who aren't really familiar with standards.
Yeah.
So could you just remind us, what standards do you specialise in and why?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, the first standard I ever specialised in was, as we said right at the beginning, BS 5750. But that soon developed into ISO 9000, which brought it in line with the international standards. Also, in the days of RACL, I was having to use some of the ACRAT standards, because we were developing some military equipment, normally from the security point of view, not from any sort of weapons point of view. So 9000 was the natural fit. When I got into BSI, I was steered in the direction of 27,000 and 20,000, mainly from the point of view of my background, because BSI, as I'm sure most certifications do, they make sure that the assessors that go in are familiar with the business model and things like that. So put it this way, I wouldn't be asked to do a 9,000 visit on a construction site.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what should be done on a construction site. Yet I was able to go and do 9,000 visits in care homes and in hospitals and things like that. And that was partly because of my relationship I had with care homes and hospitals with BOC EMEA and that sort of thing. So you get aligned to what you should be doing. So I got pushed into 27 and 20. Well, I say pushed, I was asked, and quite happily took them. And it was only when I left BSI and came into Blackmores that I was able to develop that further, following that sort of quality service risk path. So we've got business continuity, which is a risk standard, PII and cloud security, which you mentioned, which is the 27,017, 27,018. Facilities management, that's a new standard. That's 41,000. And of course, AI management, 42,000. But if you were to ask me which standard is my favourite, every time it's got to be ISO 20000-1.
Yep.
It's a sadly undersold standard. It's so good, so useful. It started off to be an IT service management system, but it's now been developed so it can be used for any services. So a few years ago, we helped an organisation which was doing facilities management actually implement 20,000. And they got their certification first time round without any findings, which was great. But I always refer to 20,000 as 9001 on steroids.
Yeah.
Whereas 9001 gives you a very broad management system, 20,000 gives you a very focused quality system. around service management. And there's a lot of companies out there, I'm sure, who are struggling to use 9,000 to manage their service management systems, whereas they should all be using 20,000. And the fault of this probably lies with the people writing contracts.
Yeah.
So often we see contracts from government, especially, where they say you've got to have 9,001, not actually understanding, well, what is important to this provider, to us as a government. And they don't realize that actually 20,000 is better in some companies than 9,000. But because it's a contract, everybody wants that contract, so they go and get 9,001. And it becomes a bit of a pain in the backside because they're trying to implement this standard that doesn't really fit with their organization. I do remember some years ago when I was in BSI, I went to a client. This was just for a pre-assessment. It's normally where you went out and just checked that they understood what the standard was about. And it was a pre-assessment for 20,000. And when I got there, we soon realized that 20,000 wasn't going to be able to be implemented because A, they didn't own their IT equipment. It was all rented in. B, they weren't providing a service with a service desk, and so on and so forth. A whole list of things that they couldn't demonstrate. So I said, well, 20,000 isn't the right thing. So they said, but it's on our contract. I said, so you need to go back to the provider and say, look, we won't put 20,000 in, but we will put 9,000 in, we'll put 27,000 in, and that will give you what you want.
Yeah.
Which they did do, and they were able to address that. So sometimes I think, I know contracts are important. You've got to sort of follow the contract. But sometimes it's worth companies just pushing back a little bit and saying, look, sorry, but 9,000 isn't a good fit. We can produce you a better management system by using this standard and this standard rather than blindly sort of say yes to what the contract says. But it's funny, I still see contracts coming out from government which are quoting standards that no longer exist.
Oh dear.
They're defunct. And that's because the people writing the contracts haven't really got an understanding of what they're asking for.
Yeah.
And, they haven't been kept up to date, or they've been given a template by somebody. You must state this and everything. And they've never really checked. But hey-ho, that's life. But yeah, 20,000 is my favourite. I've got to say that I love doing that. And in simple terms, it is a service quality management system. So quality is not lost by doing 20,000.
No, yeah, it's definitely a good one, and it's one that we've dived into before in the show. And in fact, you were our guest for those ones as well. So if anyone listening wants to learn more about 20,000, I'll have some links in the show notes to those podcasts which dive into the standard in a bit more detail. I guess my question for you, obviously, with all the projects that you work for in Blackmores, because I don't really get to hear much about sort of, I wouldn't say what goes wrong with you guys, but I mean, I'm sure you guys hit hurdles during projects that us in the admin team don't get to hear about. So what was the biggest challenge that you had during a project, and how did you overcome it?
I've got to I always look back with amusement, actually, at this one. It was the fact that we had to produce a management system in 10 days.
Oh, wow. That's quite a big ask.
And that is. It was a 9,000 system. Well, right, it's a strange one. The client had decided to let their 9,000 lapse when it went from the 2008 to the 2015 standard.
Yeah.
And in doing so, when they had their customers come and do an audit, it turned out that that was a contractual requirement to have 9,000. And they were told by their customer, well, sorry, but you've got to have that in place. Otherwise, you lose the contract. And the fact that this organization was, or this customer was their biggest customer, it was going to be a big chunk of their business disappearing. We were then asked to go in, and I found out on my first day in there that we had 10 days to get this in. So I did write a poem about it. It was called Stevie, and it was based upon Ernie the fastest milkman in the West, but just wrote a verse about it. But anyway, that's another thing. I won't quote the poem. But it wasn't a case of having to write everything from scratch because a lot of it was already there under the 2008 standard. All we were doing was just doing all this transition bit and adding the bits that 2015 wanted. And we did it. It wasn't all down to me, though. I will certainly say that the client was brilliant because they listened and they pulled out all the stops and they worked hard to get this in place. And so when we finally came to that assessment, which had to be a stage 1 and followed by a stage 2, so it's quite costly, we at least got through stage 1 with, I think it was about 1 minor non-conformity, which was a bit churlish actually, but that's another matter. We then got through stage 2 flying colours, no problem whatsoever.
Oh, well done.
I always look back at that. That was probably the most challenging because you face there 10 days to get this all sorted and you're thinking, oh, we're going to do it. But this actually demonstrates that if clients work with us as consultants, we can get the job done. We're here to help you, and it does make things a lot easier. But generally, I would say my biggest problem, and probably the same with most consultants, often arises from there being limited or no leadership support.
Yep, yeah.
I'm not saying that's with every company because it isn't. It's unfair to say that. But wherever you go into a company where there's limited or no leadership support, that is where it's an uphill task. And often it's because the leadership in an organization don't understand what value the standard brings to them. I mean, any management system to a director, a CEO or COO, anybody like that, what the management system is their most valuable tool in the business. And if they accept it as that and start to use it as a valuable tool and a useful tool, then they will see how it can fit. And they can simply do this by making sure that the management system aligns with the business strategy. So if the business strategy says, right, in the next 12 months, we are going to achieve this, okay, we're going to achieve A, it should be down to the people running the quality management system to say, right, if that's what you want to achieve, we've got to do this in our quality management system. The security people need to turn around and say, this is what we need to do in IT security. And there should then be corresponding strategic plans for quality, for security, for environment, whatever standards you have, there should be qualifying plans to go with it. And that should be asked by the leadership of each of the people that head up those systems. Without that, you will never get them aligned, and people will always look at them and thinking, what value is this? So you've got to start with the strategy, align your management systems with the strategy, and make sure that your management systems are developing with your strategy. So when you finally get to that point at the end of the year or the 2 years, your management system has kept up with you. Because isn't that the problem we always find, that you go into a client and they say, oh, yeah, well, there's been so many changes here and we've just not kept up with things,
Yeah.
And that's often because right at the beginning, the strategy's been put in place, but leadership have not then asked for the strategy from the systems people, and they haven't then checked what resources are needed to make the systems develop. So that, I think, is probably the most real challenging problem. Sorry, guys, but it comes from leadership.
Yeah, it's a topic that's come up on many of our podcasts before,
Yeah.
and I believe in many of the Meet the Consultant episodes, that's been a sticking point in quite a few of the other consultants' answers to this particular question.
Yeah.
As stubborn leadership that either don't unwilling to or are too busy to get involved with the management system.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, it's a case of a lot of people are kind of like, if they don't see it as important, why should I? It's kind of that attitude trickles down and it just stagnates the entire process.
It does. And I do understand that point that management are busy, depending on what sort of firm you're in. They can be very busy at what they're doing. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be interested or linked to the management system. And the way they do it is just that simple way of saying, well, here's my business strategy. Now, you as a quality manager, come back to me with a quality management strategy. You come back to me with an information security strategy. You come back to me with an environmental strategy. And then that's build that into the whole business strategy. That way, senior management, no, they don't need to spend all the time, but they can sit comfortably knowing that their management systems are supporting them. And then they can start to use management review out of those systems to give them some evidence that things are going in the right direction or the wheels are beginning to fall off.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of people having to understand that, yes, it's going to be work up front. It's going to be a lot more work up front. But once that system's running and it's working with the way that you work as a business, then it should just be something that becomes business as usual.
Absolutely.
And as you say, through those management reviews, leadership can get key insights, which will then become a great benefit to the business that you can take forward into your planning.
because that will then help just tweak the strategy if necessary.
Yeah.
Make it clear that whether it's going in the right direction or not. So, yeah, I think you're right. It's about understanding what value you bring out through your standards and the management review.
Yeah. I guess just one last thing, which is, what's your proudest achievement? And this can be either in your personal life or work related. I'm not limiting you to either or. You can pick.
Right. Okay. It made me laugh this because you have to think about, well, what is your proudest moment? It depends where you are in your life. I mean,
Yeah.
Winning first prize as a 6-year-old in a fancy dress competition, dressed as a snowman, was a proud achievement for 6-year-old me. I was wrapped in real cotton wool. My dad was a chiropodist at the time, and they'd wrapped some sort of very light or heavy paper around me. So it was a kind of cylinder that sat around me, and I was then wrapped in cotton wool. But winning first prize is probably the only time I've ever won first prize at a fancy dress. I still have the photograph, a very grainy photograph, but I still have that. I have it on my phone, so if I'm ever visiting anybody, just say to me, "Can I see you as a snowman?" I suppose becoming a lay reader and obviously latterly a minister in the URC is a sense of achievement in that way. There were a few times I got first place in exams at school, but that was normally in music because that was my big subject. Very rarely got first place in any other subject. And I think, as I said earlier, the chase. I mean, we were told there was around about 40,000 people that had applied that year, and this was 2012, to go on the chase. And I was one of the lucky ones. I went to the auditions and things like that. Saw lots of people being kicked out in the early stages of the auditions because they just didn't measure up to the exacting standard of the producers and everything like that. Got through all that round, and finally we filmed in 2016 and got shown in 2017 and August bank holiday in the pandemic 2020. So I was obviously there to brighten up people's day in the pandemic. No, not really. I didn't even know I was going on that time, and I was just a bit surprised. Hold on a minute, that's me. Yeah, so it's a funny thing.
I suppose it's odd seeing yourself on TV, isn't it? I think we've all collectively made sure we hunted down that clip for you if we didn't see it when it was broadcast or on the reruns.
That's right. All I remember was it was Series 10, episode 119.
There you go, people. You can go look for Steve.
I don't know if it's available anywhere, but I think it does come up every now and again because every now and again people stop me in the street and say, "Oh, I saw you on TV the other night." I'm thinking, "Did you?"
Someone will have uploaded it to YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I suppose there's lots of proud achievements, but I don't tend to store them up in that sense. They are of the moment, and I enjoy them at the time. And I don't tend to sort of, collect them as trophies in that sense. So anybody that's done appraisals with me, I'm just not very good at doing appraisals. What have you achieved this year? I don't know. I've just done my work. I'm just not that sort of person. I don't know why. I just don't do things that way. Yeah, so I can't really add much more to that than I just added there. So there you are. Let's just stick with being first prize fancy dress at 6 years old.
Well, I think that speaks a lot to your character, Steve. I think that shows that you're proud with everything that you complete, all your projects that you complete. Like, no one is one shining example above all others. It's the same effort, the same skill is put into every single thing that you do.
Yeah.
And so they'll kind of stand as their own. I can imagine it would be hard to pick one particular one out of all the things that you've done in your lifetime.
Absolutely. They're all as important, and I think you treat every project you come to as being important, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on to this episode. It's been quite a deep dive one for this one. I think usually they're only half an hour, I think.
Oh, right. So how long? Oh, yeah, just over the hour. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, that's a big hind leg of a donkey, isn't it? So...
But no, thank you ever so much for sharing all of that. And yeah, thank you for coming onto the show. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
Well, actually, before we go, I'm just going to take the time to highlight a couple of things for people who are listening. The first thing being, do we actually have an upcoming event that will be covering some changes to the recently updated ISO 14001. So for those of you, if you're not aware, if you currently hold a 2015 certificate for 14001, then basically the countdown's already started to transition to the latest 2026 version. So we'll be covering all the changes and what you need to do to comply and complete that transition in a webinar on the 29th of May. And there's a few additional workshops that you can join, which include a deeper dive into lifecycle considerations and certification body Q&A with our guest NQA. So a link to register for that will be available in the show notes. And lastly, I'd just like to remind everyone to please like and share and rate this podcast on your preferred media player. If you have a few minutes to spare, we'd really appreciate a nice 5-star review if you could. Be really appreciated, as they do help us to reach a wider audience. And as always, if you have any topics that you'd like us to talk about, feel free to email us via inquiries@blackmoresuk.com. We'd love to hear from you. So that's it from me now. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch up with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.